Anohana, the flower we saw that day, is an anime that I have a bit of history with. 10 years ago, I created this channel as a means to express my thoughts on anime in a review format, inspired by other YouTubers who did similar content. I watched and reviewed Anohana back in 2012, so it was a little under a year since I started reviewing anime, but you could still tell that the review is still really rough around the edges. While I said some questionable things in that review,
all the stupid slice of life comedies want to change the quality from the shitty recent anime.
they were different times, am I right? My overall thoughts on the anime were generally positive. I guess you can say that. And it quickly became my most viewed video on the channel. In fact, it currently still is my most viewed video. It felt odd to me that even though I've made several videos after it that I would consider to be of far better quality, in terms of popularity, it still remains to be the video that best represents my channel as a whole. Somehow that didn't sit right with me. Either way, I shrugged the video off, went about my life, and after that, I never thought about Anohana again. That was until 2018, which was the same year that my grandmother died. I won't go into too much detail about it, but suffice to say, my family and I were shocked and deeply saddened to hear that she had died. She was one of the closest people in my life, and the fact that she is no longer with us anymore, it felt like I had lost a part of myself along with her. There was even a video I recorded not even a month after her passing and her funeral, and you could tell that the pain I was feeling in that recording was still very raw. However, even though she has left us physically, sometimes I feel that she is still with us in spirit. And that sensation reminded me of a series that I had not thought of in a long time, and that was Anohana. It felt like it was some kind of sign, and that sign gave me motivation to probably reevaluate my opinion on the series after so many years of not thinking about it. I then made it my duty to, after some time of healing, I would sit down and watch Anohana again with this new perspective. But then the following year, my uncle passed away, and then various pets I've had for most of my life were dying off too. And then due to some other bullshit that happened in between all of that, it caused my depression to worsen. And that's not even to mention the ongoing pandemic that has been happening for the past 18 months. My life has been such a mess over the past 3 years that I'm surprised that I'm even here to talk to you today. Needless to say, it took me a while to finally get around to watching Anohana again. But when I did, it was just what I needed at the time. I've noticed that I like to make a habit of these anniversary videos by talking about how certain anime have helped me through certain episodes of my life, so it's only natural that I do the same for this video, right? However, the personal circumstances surrounding Anohana are slightly different in this case. I'm using anime as a way to make sense of the world after 3 years of cycling through nothing but misery and grief. On paper, this sounded like a good idea in my head since the series discusses the nature of grief and learning to cope with it very candidly. However, I wasn't even sure that this was even going to work at first. People grieve and deal with loss in very different ways, and there was no guarantee that this would solve all my problems. I didn't expect it to, but maybe it just wasn't right for me. Also, the thought of my opinion on the series not changing after all these years also weighed on my mind a lot. I mean, even though my review of Clannad and Haruhi are even older than my Anohana review and just as rough around the edges, my impressions for both series haven't changed since I reviewed them. I feared that I was going into the series again wanting to find that closure, but would end up finding even more problems with it than before. But fortunately, as soon as I put on that first episode, those feelings went away pretty quickly. Watching Anohana again during this point in my life was so strange. Not because I was older or had some perspective on things, I mean that should be obvious at this point, but I was surprised that I resonated with the emotions so deeply this time around. The feelings of detachment, resentment, and overwhelming sadness, all those complex emotional states that are felt during grief, I felt them all during my rewatch. Watching these characters dig up unresolved feelings and trauma from that incident was also hard to watch in places due to its almost confrontational nature. But at the same time, seeing a bunch of broken people come together to fulfill the last wish of their late friend in spite of risking their friendships with each other, it was really cathartic. When I first watched Anohana, I wasn't emotionally mature enough to comprehend these feelings and chalked it up to being overwrought melodrama. And yes, it is totally melodramatic. It wouldn't be a Mario Okada series without it, but that doesn't mean it has to be a bad thing. Sometimes having these intense bursts of emotion acted out before you can act as sort of a sense of relief. I've seen so many people in this community express their deepest gratitude for Anohana, for how it has affected them and, in some cases, changed their outlook on life. I guess the original motivation for my old review in the first place was to understand where those people were coming from. And I can say that after 10 years, I finally get it. The purpose of this video from the beginning was never meant to re-review Anohana and pretend that my previous review never existed. Because it did exist. The video is still up on my channel as we speak. To deny its existence would render this journey that I have been on for the past 3 years completely pointless. I have kept the video up as a reminder to myself of just how far I've come, not just as a content creator, but also as a person. Truth be told, I originally planned for this video to be much longer and more grandiose in scale. I would have started it with a scathing takedown of my old review for not knowing what it's like to go through bereavement, and I would gradually share my experiences with this trauma in greater detail. But I ended up scrapping it. The reason why I scrapped it was a culmination of other things getting in the way and piling on top of each other in the moment, but I think on a deeper, more philosophical level, at the end of the day, I can't get hung up on this forever, and that someday I will have to move on from this. I'm not saying that you have to forget about them entirely. Far from it, you can still honor their memory like I'm doing here. This, I don't know if you can see that, this purple shirt. This was one of the last things that my granny bought for me before she died. And like, I've loved this shirt for a long time, but it has like very special meaning to me now. But what I'm trying to say is that you don't have to let those personal tragedies stop you from living your own life. Admittedly, there's still a lot of trauma that I need to overcome, but in recognizing that, I have made steps towards getting myself back to where I used to be, back on track, and with the progress that I have made thus far, like baby steps, but I'm still getting there, I'm hopeful that everything will be alright in the end. And I have to thank Anohana for teaching me just that. It took me 10 years to get to this point, but I'm still thankful nonetheless. So there you go. That is how I was wrong about Anohana. And you know what? I'm glad that I was. I've been IrishAnimeFan. Thank you for putting up with me for the past 10 years, and I hope to see many of you in the near future. Until next time, Slán.